Okay, good morning and welcome. I'm Erin Livingston with HGAC, and we have a great webinar lined up for you this morning about managing the difficult aspects of your recycling program. But before we get started, I'm going to go over some general notes about the event logistics. Next slide. Okay, so first, meeting is being recorded. Like you may have just heard Andrea say, microphones will be muted and cameras will be turned off throughout the presentations. If you are on the phone and unmuted, please mute your phone now. We will have time for questions at the end of each presentation. Just type your questions in the chat box. You can access that using the control bar on the bottom of your screen. To do so, click on the speaking bubble icon. You can also raise your hand. There's a little raise your hand thing down there, and we can unmute you if you want to ask your question verbally. So if you are on a handheld device, you can access the chat by clicking on the three dots on the lower right side of your screen and choosing chat in the menu. If you are attending the webinar via telephone only and prefer to ask your question verbally, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and we'll call on you to unmute during the question portions of the workshop. If you have issues at any time during the webinar, just type them into the chat box and Wendy or Andrea will help you out. If you are listening in, or if you are listening to the webinar with somebody else in the room with you, please type in both of your names in the chat box so we can accurately capture who all is in attendance. So we've got a great lineup of speakers. Like I said, we will be hearing about starting a new drop-off facility, keeping that facility sustainable, reducing contamination, and addressing inequalities in recycling access, participation, and other things. You can also find the agenda in the chat box. Yes, it's there. Okay, so before we get started with our first speaker, I did want to take a quick poll to find out what are the biggest challenges or the biggest challenge each of you has experienced in your recycling program or the program you're trying to start. So you're only able to select one option for this question. So if everyone could make their selections now, we'll find out the collective experience of the audience. All right, they're coming in fast and furious. So let's see. Right now, contamination's big. Oh, well, buy-in to start a program started to climb, but still contamination is out there in front. So we'll give it just a little bit longer for some of you to get your votes in. Okay, we're going to close the poll now. So, yep, contamination by far is the biggest one, followed by buy-in to start a program. And then about equal numbers on participation, education, finances, and just one person on staffing. So glad to hear y'all are doing good on staffing. So, okay, I would like to welcome our first speaker now. So first up, we have Bill Harrison, the superintendent of the Conroe, North Montgomery County Recycle Center since it opened in 2017. Bill has a bachelor's of science in criminal justice and a master's in education in vocational education from the Sam Houston State University. Prior to his current position, he spent 35 years as an administrator at a residential school for adjudicated youth. His happy place is spending time with his children, grandchildren, and wife of 51 years at a cabin on the Frio River. So today he's going to be walking us through the process of starting up a new recycling drop-off facility in Montgomery County. Hand it over to you, Bill.
Good morning, and on behalf of my commissioner, Robert Walker, we are happy that you're here and want to learn something about starting a new recycle facility. Montgomery County Precinct 1 was the last precinct in the county to begin a recycling program. The advantage to us was that we could see what other precincts had done and benefit from their experiences. We're a large county, and the closest recycling facility to us was Precinct 3 in the Woodlands, over 20 miles away. Precinct 3 had a facility that had been open for a number of years in an area where, because of the large number of out-of-state move-ins, the thought of recycling was not a threat to personal freedom or a way of life. Precinct 1 had been an agricultural community back to the 1800s, with an emphasis on cotton, tobacco, and timber production. Unlike until Lake Conroe was built in the 70s, there was very little residential growth. Prior to the lake coming in, incorporated areas had a landfill, and rural areas had burn barrels, gullies and washes to dump things that would not burn. With all of this history in mind, longtime Commissioner Mike Metter, with the urging of some like-minded citizens in 2015, decided it was time for a change. As HGAC funding became available, a grant was requested and was submitted in October 2015 by my co-host, County Grants Administrator at that time, Rebecca Ansley, to fund, construct, and equip a recycling facility in Montgomery County Precinct 1. Funding by HGAC was $3,800. Matching funds, I'm sorry?
$386,000 we were awarded.
Okay. And matching funds by the county was almost $200,000 with a total project cost of $585,000. The city of Conroe granted us a certificate of occupancy on August the 1st of 2017. And with that, we were in the recycling business. Prior to opening, 3 or 4 newspaper articles had been written about the facility. And we had visited with 2 recycling centers in the county, as well as the household hazardous waste facility operated by Cheryl Burton Fentress for the Harris County Engineering Department Water Protection Group. Ms. Fentress, along with Terry Woodson, our liaison with waste management, were 2 of the most informative people I dealt with in the beginning and quickly became my mentors. From both of them, we rapidly learned, if you build it, they will come. Don't worry in the beginning about slow numbers. Focus on the type of services your customers want and what you can provide. Day one, we accepted cardboard, paper, plastic, and tin and aluminum cans. Based on our customer surveys and requests, we were able to add glass and made our first delivery of it in December of 2017. During the 2018-2019 fiscal year, we added oil, antifreeze, and latex paint and batteries to items that we were accepting for recycling. By the end of the year, fiscal year 2018-2019, we had signed contracts to accept appliances and electronics. I'm convinced that if we had attempted on day one of operation to provide all these services, we would have been a failure. Another axiom that Ms. Fentress and Ms. Woodson shared with us is that you can't be all things to all people. I've never been in a recycling facility prior to being employed to be the superintendent of one. I read everything I could on recycling after being offered the position. Based on what I read, researched, and observed, I figured out, with the exception of participating in an Adopt a Highway projects, working on litter crew at Huntsville State Park when I was a college student, and participating in Sam Houston National Forest cleanup days, I was eminently unqualified to work at a recycling center, much less be the superintendent. What I am good at is being nice to people. And I'm not afraid to ask questions. And I seek as much knowledge from others as possible. I quickly learned that there are all types of recyclers, and some are easier to work with than others. When the grant was proposed, the proposed grant was originally written, Republic Waste was a solid waste franchise for the city of Conroe, and they allowed single streaming. By the time the HGAC grant was approved, Republic was gone and Waste Management had the contract for all services in the city of Conroe. And they would not accept additional single streaming customers. By separating everything that is recycled at our facility, I think we do a better job and put more responsibility on the customers. Before COVID, we would allow customers with unsorted materials to separate once they arrived at the facility. Now it's plainly advertised in all of our printed materials as well as signage that all materials must be separated prior to arrival at the facility, and that unseparated materials are considered contaminated and will not be accepted. Through trial and error, my employees have learned that they have done an outstanding job, and they've learned what our vendors expect from us. And to date, we have only had one contaminated load leave the facility. We still have some dissenters that tell us that no other facilities require their items to be separated. And we politely tell them that every facility is subject to following requirements agreed on it with their vendors. We are pleasant, but we're firm in our enforcement of the rules and regulations. In many ways, I believe the COVID pandemic has been good for our program. Customers now remain in their vehicles, parked vehicles, allowing us to remove their recyclables as quickly as possible and return their containers or trash bags to them. And if an item or items are not accepted, the reason is explained as a lesson for their next trip. We have met a few feel-good recyclers that expect us to accept anything that they choose not to put in our household trash. But no, we don't accept greasy pizza boxes, no red Solo cups, and no plastic from around your child's Christmas toys. They're not recyclable at our facility. For the most part, though, we have a great customer base that is dedicated to leaving the world a better place. Learning everything we need to know about recycling will never be accomplished. As previously mentioned, we learn a lot from our customers as to what their recycling needs are. And in the beginning, we did a simple written survey. And now we focus on verbal interaction as to what the customers want and balance that with what the county can afford. Our addition of glass, batteries, and appliances was done at no cost to the county. In the case of appliances and aluminum, we contract with Texas Port Recycling, who provides us for free a 60-yard roll-off and a 20-yard roll-off for aluminum. When the roll-offs are full, we call them for a pickup, and they usually pay the county $800 to $900 for the metal. We have a retired man employed that seeks that as needed, and he removes Freon from refrigerators, freezers, AC units, so they can go into our metal recycling. We do all this at no cost to the customer, as this is a free facility and no money is accepted. Decision-making has changed at our facility since January of 2021. After 28 years, our county commissioner, Mike Netter, chose to retire and not run for re-election. Our new commissioner, Robert Walker, has changed a few things, including our hours and days of operation. We're now open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and we're closed Saturdays, Sundays, and county holidays. In general, the changes have been accepted by our customers, and we're off to a good start with the new administration. COVID, as well as the weather, had an impact on our operation. From March 18th to April 28th of 2020, we were closed by order of our county judge. February 15th through February 19th of 2021, the county judge closed us for snow. Changes change disrupts recycler schedules, and many of our customers are elderly and come at the same time on the same day every time. Bad weather, holidays, training, or pandemic is not an acceptable excuse to most of them for being closed. By the spring of 2019, it became apparent that we were running out of space to increase volume, as well as adding electronics and expanding our metal recycling. Our commissioner, in conjunction with our wonderful maintenance department, doubled the size of our covered outside work area. Despite our best efforts to stay caught up on shipping plastic and cardboard by volume, our largest number of items taken in, we almost daily had to request a grade all be sent from the county to compact these items in 30-yard roll-off containers. Not only did it remove a machine and an operator from County Road, but they brought their 4-man crew with them. The grade all operator could not run by himself. With some direction and advice from Waste Management, it was decided that 2 compactors and 3 30-yard roll-off compactor containers was the best solution for our problem. We made application for a 2021 grant from HGAC and received notification in November 2019 that we tentatively had been awarded the grant. The county was in the middle of a change in their budgeting, accounting, and purchasing system. And by the time everything was fixed and the compactors ordered, it was July 28th of 2020. By the time both compactors were built, delivered, and put into operation, it was the last week of December 2020. One of the major delays in getting the compactors online was the complexity of their installation. I had erroneously assumed that, a compactor was like a car. It came ready to work. The installation and make ready was not included. And the only thing more frustrating than waiting on a grant to purchase the compactors was to have the equipment delivered and not being able to use them. The closest certified installer for Marathon compactors was out of Fort Worth, and we were fortunate to get him between Christmas and New Year's to come up and install our compactors. So far, the number of hauls of plastic and cardboard has rapidly declined, and our cost decreased, and the ease of handling these materials has improved. Prior to the pandemic, I sold the program everywhere I went. We were working with the local elementary school to try and begin a recycling program and participating in career day activities. But this all ended in March of 2020 due to COVID. Additional bad estimates that I made was the amount of electronics and appliances containing Freon that would be brought to the recycle center. I was told by Carl Brosh, our liaison with the city of Conroe, that if we started taking in electronics for free, we would be overwhelmed. I thought he was overestimating the volume of old televisions, computers, hard drives, laptops, printers, and copiers that were in the county to recycle. But Mr. Brosh was right. We have hoarders in North Montgomery County that bring us televisions that are 30 years old, have been inoperable for years, and perhaps made a move or two with the family to a new home. In addition, we get enough dish and direct TV dishes and receivers that we could open our own satellite network. CompuCycle picks up 12 pallets of electronics at our facility, weighing 10 to 12,000 pounds. Most of the items we send there cost 15 cents a pound, so a cost of $1,500 to $1,800 is common every 6 to 8 weeks. There's a small payback for cell phones and laptops, but it's not enough to make a significant difference in our costs. In our original projection, our appliances containing Freon, we thought we'd get 25 more a month. The average has been closer to 12 per month at a cost of $25 each or $300 a month. Marketing our program. We participate with the city of Conroe in a collection activity the first Saturday in May, and with the Interstate Battery the first Saturday in October. Traditionally, the third weekend in March is our Precinct 1's heavy trash weekend, when the county has 3 different drop-off locations, 2 of which are in high population areas. The recycle center's role is to collect paint, but we assist in other collection activities. On March the 20th and 21st, in the 2-day weekend, we collected 3,900 pounds or 345 gallons of latex paint, 1,800 pounds or 270 gallons of oil-based paint, 47,000 pounds of tires, 3,408 yards of materials consisting of yard waste, construction debris from the pandemic or from the blizzard of 2021. Appliances, and even old fiberglass boats. Many of these items brought to the event would have been recyclable if they'd been brought to the recycle center, and customers were encouraged to use the system that was free and open Monday through Friday, rather than wait for an annual event. Our primary duty at these events is to collect and recycle latex paint, but we put a recycle brochure in everyone's hand promoting the program and making our potential customers aware as to what they can recycle at our facility for free instead of having to wait for once-a-year event. From every call we receive, and we get a lot of them at the recycle center asking questions about recycling, we text or email a copy of our recycle center brochure. Periodically, the city of Conroe will include in their monthly water bills inserts about upcoming recycling events. This has proved to be an excellent way to get out promotion of recycling to over 20,000 homes for 2 cents per insert or $400. The city continues to a huge growth rate in the number of new homes sold in North Montgomery County. The city of Conroe has been involved with Montgomery County Precinct 1 recycling program back to the original HGAC grant. All informal agreements and informal agreement had been made in the initial HGAC grant that the quote, city of Conroe will be providing the recycling containers for single stream recycling and will be contracting with the Republic Waste for the pickup service, end of quote. It further stated that the city of Conroe is 100% in support of this project and will continue its partnership with the county to see this facility as a success. By the time the facility was completed and ready to open, there was a new mayor in the city, and Conroe and Republic Waste was no longer the vendor and had been replaced by Waste Management, who weren't accepting any more single stream customers. At some point, a figure of $50,000 had been agreed to by the parties as a cost of recycling. But when it came time to open the facility, the city had only budgeted $25,000 annually for the cost of recycling only the plastic and the cardboard. Our liaison for the city was experienced in working with waste companies, and he was and still is a helpful to our facility, but a change needed to occur. where the city shares of expenses increased. After the meeting and negotiations, the city of Conroe agreed and signed an interlocal agreement with Montgomery County that effective May 1st and renewable every May 1st afterward. The city pays Montgomery County Precinct 1 $50,000 to cover the cost of recycling city's materials brought to the facility by city residents. What does the future hold? We're constantly asked by why we don't accept certain items. For example, construction debris, yard waste, mattresses, old furniture, and et cetera. We do a lot of information and referral. Our normal answer is that there's other facilities in the area that will accept these items, and as courtesy, we give them names, addresses, and phone numbers, and address other information. Someday I foresee the possibility of additional weekly mobile recycle center in the Lake Conroe area, somewhere close to Montgomery. I'm not advocating that it happens, but I see a potential need for it. Even some of the nicer subdivisions in the area, which have outside or curbside recycling, have residents that prefer to use our facility because we have the reputation that we're very serious about what we accept. And if it can't be recycled, we will not accept it. I'm hopeful that we can remain a free and user-friendly recycling program, at least until my retirement in May of 2025. I'm honored to work with some of the finest coworkers anywhere, serving a wonderful customer base that believes, as we do, that through recycling and reusing, we can make the world a better place. None of this would have been responsible without the continuing support from the Houston-Galveston Area Council. And the picture on the screen is of our of what recycling was when we began, and we're hoping to see the burn barrels leave. Thank you. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you so much, Bill. And I think it was a smart decision how y'all started small and added things as you went so that you would get overwhelmed and have a big old mess at the beginning. So everybody can go ahead and type in questions, and I will give you a minute to do that. I had a couple of questions, so we'll start off with those. And then I do already see a question in there. So first of all, about the getting this started, you mentioned that there were some citizens that reached out to Commissioner Metter. Were these like an organized group of citizens, or just random people were like, hey, we want recycling?
Well, I believe y'all had funded at an earlier date a program, something with the commissioner about something not an anti-litter program.
Okay.
And because of the anti-litter program, and that litter and refuse on the sides of the road and under our bridges is such an issue, and because that using a landfill, first of all, fills up landfills with things that otherwise could be recycled, and that it takes away land, that I think that had probably more to do than anything else. There was not a formal group, but people that moved in to our precinct and the more affluent areas were surprised, and I think somewhat offended that there wasn't a ready available recycle facility in the area.
Yeah, I think that happens when new people move in.
Aaron, I just want to point out that in North Montgomery County, it's still a little bit rural. I mean, there are subdivisions popping up around the recycle center recently, but issues of the illegal dumping on the side of the roads, trash down the highways on 75 where Commissioner Metter's office was, he would receive those calls about, the trash and the illegal dumping. And so, every other precinct in our county had a recycle center. And so he saw that as this is becoming an issue and we need to do something about it. And so that's why, you know, there were conversations that started at the precinct and then reached to the city of Conroe. Hey, can we collaborate on this? You know, what is your support? And that's really where it started. You know, those residents did call to complain. Then, you know, taking a look at what else is available in the county, there was nothing available in that part of the county.
We have 165,000 acre national forest in the north end of the area. And unfortunately, it has on many of its roads become a dump ground because it's for many of the people that otherwise couldn't afford it or just weren't the right kind of folks. They use the national forest as a dump ground versus for its intended purpose.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. There are questions that have come in, so we'll start. Okay, so who is your glass recycler? Do you use Waste Management or do you send it to somebody else? You know?
No, we use someone else. It'll take me a minute to think of the name. I may have to get back with you on that. But
Okay.
out of Houston, and it was fortunately the man that runs the plant or is in charge is a local resident, and he read in the paper that we were opening. He came by and visited and said, "I don't think y'all would be interested in recycling glass."
Mm-hmm.
And we did a little negotiation, and he was willing to accept our price free. And it was just a real asset to the program. It's interesting to me how many places don't accept glass. I think the name of the company is Strategic Materials, and I'll provide the number if anybody.
Yeah, that's who I was going to guess it was. That's Houston. Okay. Next question says, what is the biggest challenge at your facility?
Well, I've shared with Rebecca, I think our biggest challenge is technology. We went without a phone for 2 years, no landline. We have little or no cell phone coverage. We have a very expensive fiber optic line that seems to hook to computers that often do not work. Maybe it's operator error, but it's been a growth in learning. Connecting with customers is tough, but you know, we show a lot of patience, and we do have a wonderful customer base. Reaching out to all of them is kind of tough. We've attempted everything from next door to weekly columns in the paper for certain subdivisions. North Montgomery County is a very diverse area, and it goes everything from abstract poverty to subdivisions with $750,000 to $1 million homes. And we all live together and all have to work and survive together, and recycling and keeping the environment clean ought to be equally important to all of us, but some people focus on it a little bit more than others.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. Question about batteries. How do you store your batteries while they're waiting to be hauled to avoid fires?
We're real fortunate. Interstate Battery is about 4 blocks from our facility. We own the smaller batteries, the 9 volts, things like that. We learned from Ms. Fentress watching her operation that, you know, you put tape over the contacts and everything else, but we try and haul as quickly as possible up to Interstate Battery. We generously accepts all batteries we bring. Yes, they make some money off of some of them, but alkaline batteries and some others, I have no idea how they break even on that, but they will accept them, and they're a big supporter of our program. And in turn, when they do an annual collection in October, we take real good care of them. So our batteries aren't kept very long, so we don't have to worry as much about fire.
Okay, that's nice. And then there was a question. I don't know if this is something you can answer. They said they're looking at hosting a tire recycling or disposal event. Tips or tricks? Have you done a tire event? And if not, that's okay.
Yeah, we have a large tire event once a year. That's where we got the 47,000 pounds of tires on March 20th and 21st. Tire
Okay.
nightmare. I did make a deal with an informal agreement with where I have my tire work done, and they'll take a tire anytime from a customer, not just people that they sell tires to. And they give a pretty good rate, but tires are very expensive to get rid of. I refer a lot of people to a tire place in Willis that if they want to get rid of their old tires and not wait a year, and I try and encourage them to get rid of them, because if they don't, they'll hold water for a year and help mosquitoes breed, and we have enough of them naturally.
Yes. Well, there's another question. Technically, your time's up. We'll ask this last question. What is your biggest challenge with TV recycling?
Volume. I'm still amazed, but we get them. We get everything but old-timey cabinet models and projection TVs, and we try and make sure they're from a residence, not a business. But people do keep them, and then we wrap them, prepare them for shipment, and then we call the vendor, and they come pick them up, and we pay. I'm assuming that we'll keep doing that in perpetuity because we don't seem to be reducing the volume. It's better for them to be recycled, even if it costs us 15 cents a pound, than to fill up landfills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think everybody's still getting those big tube televisions. So I don't think you're alone in that. So, okay. Well, thank you so much, Bill. And stick around because we may have questions at the end for you. So I'm going to introduce our next speaker now. So next we are going to hear from Rachel Herring, the director of Keep Texas Recycling, a program of Keep Texas Beautiful. For the past 15 years, Rachel has worked with a variety of entities to implement, grow, or modify their recycling programs. While her focus is to expand recycling access in rural and underserved communities, Rachel has also been able to provide additional support to all by working with manufacturers, end markets, brands, and national organizations to explore ways to make recycling more efficient and beneficial to all parts of the supply chain. And so now she's going to talk to us about how to keep your recycling program going for the long haul. So turning it over to you. And if you have questions at any time, you can type those into the chat box.
All right. Thank you, Erin. Bill, you really teed me up for a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about and kind of reiterating some of your points. So thank you for that. Good morning, everybody. First, just kind of some introduction slides for you. I am with Keep Texas Beautiful. Our mission is to inspire and empower Texans to keep our communities clean and beautiful. And we do that through these three different focus areas: litter prevention, beautification, and waste reduction. Litter prevention, probably what we're most known for through our Great American Cleanup efforts and Don't Mess with Texas, Trash Off, giving out supplies, adopt a spots, things like that. It's all something we're a part of. Beautification, we do a lot of projects that involve community gardens. I'm seeing some really cool projects of murals that are going up and some downtown revitalization, which we love to see, kind of bringing back old Texas in a lot of ways. And then obviously waste reduction, which is, what I'm going to talk more about today. I do believe that, like Bill talked about, this waste reduction efforts are really going to help with hopefully less litter out in the world. So it's a really important aspect of what we do. So Keep Texas Recycling is the program that I work on. Really, it's one of the things that we feel like is just expanding by leaps and bounds. Everyone is getting involved with recycling. But our core focus through Keep Texas Recycling is our rural recycling cooperative. We manage about 60 different communities, marketing of their materials. We do a lot of implementation projects. Sometimes it's going into a program that's not efficient and wants some help, and we work with them to make it the best program it could be. We also do a lot of strategic projects. We've worked with some national organizations with a focus on hard to recycle items and how we can add that into a recycling program. And we've also started some, kind of brand specific projects. We're actually working with 3 HGAC communities right now that were struggling with contamination in their plastic. They were programs that only took number 1 and number 2 plastics, and we're getting just about everything else. So we've worked with them on education and trying to see how we can get more volume into their programs. And plastic is definitely one of the things that has a very low capture rate in the scheme of things. And so we're trying to figure out how we can get those plastic bottles into the recycling programs, out of the waterways, and different aspects of that. We also do a lot of technical assistance. I don't think I've ever said no to anyone that's ever asked for help. And, like Bill said, ask for help. It's so important. And so, we're constantly learning from everybody's different programs, successes, failures, all of it is super helpful. We do a lot of training through Keep Texas Beautiful, and try and work with just about anyone and everyone that we can. I also want to give a little special shout out to HEB. They've been a really great partner for us. They're so committed to recycling and communities in Texas. And we're just really thankful for some of the work that we've done with them. So first I wanted to show, I just love this graphic in general. This is from Resource Recycling, kind of shows all the different, factors that go into recycling, and quite honestly, what makes recycling somewhat complicated. There's lots of different people that touch what's going on with recycling. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as just putting it on the curb and it goes away. There is the retailers, the municipalities, the haulers, and most importantly, the people that are trying to have a sustainable recycling program in their community. And they're kind of at the forefront of what needs to happen next to move the needle with recycling. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about markets and what makes something more or less recyclable. Too often, I don't think when people are starting their recycling, they consider where the material is going to go. We've kind of come into those programs before and seen where they decided to take things, but the end market is 4 hours away, and that's really difficult to necessarily get it to where it needs to go. Considering how you're collecting material is also very important, and your distance to either an end market or the material recovery facility or a MRF. I'm going to use that term throughout my presentation. Sometimes people don't take that into consideration. They want to collect loose material and it has to travel 4 hours to get to where it needs to go. And when the markets are down, that can really hurt a program. A lot of times, deciding if you're going to bail material to help with that transportation and move in logistics of moving around is super helpful. I know of one very big city that is far enough away from a MRF and was collecting loose and is now and doesn't have a processor now. And so they are struggling with their recycling program and what they're going to do next. So deciding how you're going to collect is a super important part of it. Also, what you're going to collect. Luckily, most of the people on the call today are in the Houston area. You have a lot of different outlets in the Houston area, but if you're not, you need to decide what is the best option for you and what the volume is going to look like if you decide to take that particular item. A lot of times when we've started out with programs, we've started with just cardboard. That's a really easy commodity. There's a lot of volume to it. We can move it to end markets all over the place. It's been a really successful one for us to start with. Or we start with that and paper, maybe aluminum cans because there's a local metal recycler we can utilize. Really think about those things and then add things in later. Like Bill mentioned, they started with kind of some core products and then they added in glass when they felt more comfortable. That's another thing that I have kind of recommended over the years. A lot of times the education of what's recycled at the site, it, you know, has some time to catch up when you bring things in, because once you start taking something, trying to stop it is not easy. So, you know, you want to kind of take that into consideration. You know, instead of maybe taking all the plastics, maybe just take the 1s and 2s, the PET, the HDPE, the bottles, the ones that we know that have a higher level of volume versus some of the ones that don't. That's kind of just one thing to think about when you are considering your markets and what you're going to do. Another thing that I think is really important is watching markets and understanding what the pricing is. This is kind of something that, you know, Keep Texas Recycling does for our 60 members. But I think, you know, to keep your program sustainable, whether it is a curbside recycling program or a drop-off program, knowing what this looks like is super helpful. I wouldn't know what any of this was if I wasn't in recycling. I don't know what the price of copper is because I don't really deal with metal recycling, but I definitely know what the price of cardboard is. And I subscribe to something and watch it. These services show what the commodity pricing is by grade and by geographic region. We're actually in the Southwest region. That kind of helps show what, you know, our end markets are doing and what that looks like. Now, if you don't want to pay for a service, I highly, you know, recommend subscribing to Recycling Today or Resource Recycling, Waste Dive. There's a lot of great trade magazines that also show what the prices are. I've had different instances where I've worked with communities who were getting $100 less a ton on their material because they just didn't know what the price should be. So watching this is kind of a next step in your program. If you have a single stream program, this isn't out of your realm either, honestly, because it does affect what your processing fees might be. And if you're about to go out for, you know, bid for new services, or, you know, your contract's up for renewal, knowing what the prices are is going to be helpful in kind of understanding what your processing fees might be. So kind of works on both sides, but it's a really helpful tool to understand where you're at. So I wanted to highlight, I have these kind of graphs and historical things for just about every commodity, but mixed paper has been a really, really interesting one the past few years, and really kind of gives a story as to what happens in the markets. As you can see, that big turquoise line, you know, things can go high and things can go very low, like the blue line from 2019. This shows in 2017, that was right before China banned the fiber coming in from the United States. So we saw a spike and that price was super high when they were getting everything over there. And then you can see 2018, the orange line, and 2019, the blue line, it crashed. We could hardly move mixed paper during that time. It was really, really difficult. You know, if we could get rid of it for no cost, that was great, because it meant it wasn't going to the landfill, but it was a really hard thing. And a lot of programs were debating, should we continue to take mixed paper? I'm happy to say that there was kind of some silver linings that we saw in 2020 due to the pandemic and due to this ban. We know that a lot of MRFs installed some technology to get a better quality out of the mixed paper, cut down on the contamination, and really make it cleaner. A clean product is what sells. That's what we're all trying to work towards, and why contamination is such a big deal. So that was one positive that we saw from the Chinese ban. As far as the pandemic goes, there was a lot of commercial cardboard that wasn't coming out of businesses because they were closed. But the demand was still there because we were all ordering things to our homes. And not going out to businesses, but we were definitely getting the cardboard boxes at our house. And so we saw some mills kind of change their recipe for how they were making different products. And one of them was to incorporate more mixed paper into the stream because they weren't getting so much corrugated. And that was good. I mean, that was a really great thing for us, because you can see from that red line, the price started to inch back up. It's kind of leveled off now that things are moving a little bit more, but this is just a great example of how we have kind of shifted from that, foreign reliance on a market to something that is kind of becoming more domestic. And that's, for us in Texas, we're starting to see really good things, and that's exciting. Okay, so next, one of the things that we all need to look at are your operations. I think I've heard a lot of different people tell me, well, we've been doing this for 20 years, it works, we're good. And the bottom line is recycling is always changing. There's always something new going on, new packaging, whatever it might be. All of that lends itself to evaluating, is your program as efficient as possible? And a lot of times I like to look at equipment and see what's going on there and how that is working best for you. We have really kind of done this in the past year because things were a little slower, things had kind of changed, and really wanted to see, are we maintaining the equipment that we're getting? Do we know when the end of life is, so we can start planning to go out for that HGAC grant to get new equipment? Are we spending too much in maintenance versus just buying a new piece of equipment or getting a grant for a new piece of equipment? That's all the kinds of things that we want to look at with our communities. I really like this picture. This is in your region. When we start some of these drop-off recycling programs, a lot of times we'll start with one baler because we've already spent a lot of money on the building and some of the other things right off the bat. And so we'll start with one baler to kind of process everything. Eventually, we love to have a baler for each different commodity. That really helps with the process and makes things more efficient, keeps it all clean because you can put it right into the baler. And that's, a few of the things that we're looking for. I think, looking at your bins, your carts on the curb, are they getting old? When do you predict you're going to need to replace those? All of that is super important. Bill also mentioned, the hours and days of operation at these sites. That's also something to evaluate. Sometimes people think you need to be open every day of the week and not 8 hours a day. And sometimes kind of changing that can cut down on some costs and make it more efficient. I know in the poll, people said staffing was really low on their concern level, but this past year, we saw a lot of changes with staffing. COVID really affected our essential workers, and these recycling and sanitation staff were out on, in the trenches every day, going to work while we stayed home. And I mean, they were just the heroes, I think, over the last year. They were getting COVID while they were out there. They were taking care of COVID sick family members. It changed and people were short on drivers. That was a big thing that we saw this past year. And some decided just to retire and get out of it altogether. So I do think staffing can be have a big effect on how your program works and is efficient. And that's something we always look at. One of our county programs utilizes trustees from the county jail to process their material. Well, because COVID had such an effect on the jails, it was something that meant that county basically shut down their recycling program for the last year. That's something that we need to evaluate and not rely completely on one type of staffing. We need to look and see how to make sure that doesn't happen again. So understanding what your staff looks like in a crisis is important. And then some other parts of your operations are definitely worth evaluating as well. We're also seeing these unmanned drop-off sites. It just ends up being, in my experience, and I know there's always exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, it's something that we're seeing is convenient to the residents, but ends up being inconvenient to most recycling programs, because then they are forced to go through the trash, pay to get trash that is not, things that aren't recyclable in this site. Kind of leads to illegal dumping a lot. I mean, there's just a number of things that make unmanned facilities not super convenient in the scheme of things. I do have a picture of one bin that we have out there that's, specifically for cardboard. It's very well marked. It has that slot, so you have to break down the cardboard to put it in there. That's been a successful unmanned drop site. But beyond that, just letting anything and everything go in these sites, you really have to evaluate what you're doing on that side. As far as some of the signage and some of the things that we're seeing there, that's something that we're really looking at with all of our communities. We are fortunate enough, and I know Recycling Partnership is on the call. They have great graphics and things that we've been able to use. If your signage is just words, consider graphics, because we know that people just don't always want to read what's going on, no matter how well marked things are. So we are putting obviously the wording in, but a graphic and something in Spanish. We want it to be inclusive for anybody and everybody to understand when they come to your site. And we are trying to do more training and professional development within your operations. Like Bill mentioned, he didn't know anything about recycling prior to joining the team there, and that's probably about 99% of the folks that I work with. So doing some recycling 101, really showing them the process, why they're doing what they're doing. A lot of times that gets them passionate about it, and they feel good, and they know that their work is something that's really, really valuable to the community. So I highly encourage professional development. So next is a little bit more about how to get your community involved in things that if you're not currently doing, consider it. I really, really believe that looking to the leaders and making sure they know what's going on with the program and get them invested in it is so important. These are a couple different pictures. I started a program years ago where we went out and gave awards for how much they recycled from the previous year. This really got us in front of the city council or the county commissioner's court to make sure that they knew what was happening out at the recycling center. So when, the program is possibly on the chopping block when it comes to budget time, they see the value in it. They, even if they're not necessarily environmentally conscious, it helps them understand why it is an important part of the community. Give them a little pat on the back for supporting it. It really goes a long way. But I also really, really want to recognize the guys that are out there doing the heavy lifting. I think, again, they're kind of the unsung heroes. They don't, there's so much they see and so much they risk and so much they do for us that giving them a high five, thank you as well, is super important in what we try and do each year. We also try and get ahead of when the leadership changes. We've had county commissioners that have started programs, and when they left, the next one came in and they didn't care about it at all, and they wanted to shut it down. So we try as soon as there is a change. In fact, I just met a county commissioner in East Texas a month ago. I went and met a new city manager this week. I want them to understand what the program's about, get them to ask me any questions about it, and make sure that they know more, because I do think that really does go a long way and is helpful. So also trying to understand where their motivation might be. Is it revenue? Is it environmental? Making sure that they see the value in the program, because we definitely had programs, including in the HGAC region, where somebody came in that didn't believe in it. They shut it down. And then as soon as that person was gone, the community brought it back. So it happens, and it's good to just touch base with those people. But also, do you have your school involved? That's something that we see a lot. I hear all the time, if you teach the kids, they'll teach the adults, but they don't necessarily have their school doing things. And so how can you get them more involved? There's a picture of them on a tour at one of the recycling centers, but I think they're really great to kind of get the education and the word out about what's happening at your program. A shameless plug for Keep Texas Beautiful. These affiliates, they're really great cheerleaders for your program, and they most likely want to be involved. Maybe they would be volunteers in an electronic event or a tire collection event, things like that. There's a million different ways to try and utilize them if you have that in your area. Where are you not recycling in your area? We focus so much on residents and making sure that they're happy, but a lot of times the commercial side of it too is important. So we get chamber and EDC and those folks involved as well, and make sure that if there's somebody out there in the area that wants to recycle or wants to support in whatever way, the recycling program, we want to get them involved. And then I'm a big believer, I know Bill mentioned that doing surveys and quizzes and having things on your website, apps, contests, anything that gives some life to your program. I also believe in tours for city council, for county commissioners. It's not just for the schools. I would definitely consider bringing people out. I was at a site not too long ago, and they said, we've never had anyone from city council come out and participate with this program at all. Letting them see what's happening, I think, again, is that buy-in that's super helpful. Have them shadow a driver for a day, somebody that's doing cart inspections. Let them see why contamination can be such a big deal and what we want to try and overcome. And then another thing that we look at is partnerships. I think, you know, sometimes we kind of get in our lane of recycling and we don't necessarily reach out to other things that could, you know, help grow the program or things that we can utilize. I can say when I first started this in this industry, I don't really feel like brands in general were super vested in helping us with recycling and helping us with the issue, you know, with taking this material back. You know, there was always grants and some things happening kind of behind the scenes, but now they are all embracing sustainability. They have sustainability goals. They're trying to use their plastic bottles, like a project that we're doing with Ozarka. They want those bottles back because they want to make new bottles out of old bottles. It's really, really great to see. So even if this is not something, or that business isn't necessarily in your community, look and see what they're doing, because they have all kinds of contests and grant funding and lots of great things that could really help your program. I mentioned businesses already. Who's out there that can help give you some funding or do some things that might be beneficial? If you've got some, you never know who's living in your community that might be able to help you out. I also am super impressed with a lot of the national organizations and some of the things that they're doing. There's a lot of conglomerates like the Glass Packaging Institute, the Carton Council, that are focused specifically on one type of commodity, and they're looking at how they can best recycle it. We've also worked with Product Stewardship Institute, called Recycle, you know, some of those hard to recycle things that, again, is a great thing to add into your program as you go, to try and kind of grow it and you know, give a spotlight to your program after it's maybe been in operation for a while. And then if you're not a member of the State of Texas Alliance for Recycling, or you're not utilizing TCQ's Take Care of Texas resources and outreach materials, recycling partnership, they've been so great and given us some graphics to use for some of our signage and our outreach. These are all, I mean, I just can't stress it enough. Get involved with them. They're really, really helpful. And then just some kind of last minute things, additional strategies, you know, consider the best way to communicate with your public. It might not be what you think. You know, everybody's using social media. I'm not on Facebook. I've never been on Facebook. So if you were trying to capture my attention, I wouldn't have seen it, but I am looking at your website. I am looking, you know, I read the newspaper daily. Those are some of those things that you just never know when you're going to capture those people, and you should consider the people that don't use your center, aren't putting their card out. How can you capture their attention? I think in a lot of ways, websites and some of that, we see just a bunch of words. Put some graphics up there, put some quizzes, put some things that might really capture people's attention. There's also been a lot of bad press surrounding the recycling industry. You can see from that article, recycling is dead, now what? I mean, there's so much of that going on, and I don't think we do a very good job of negating some of the things that come out in those articles. And I think that one of the best ways to do that is, again, watching the markets, knowing what's going on. I've seen some stories that are talking about things that are happening on the West Coast that don't really apply to Texas. And so that's a good way to kind of understand that a little bit better. Know who your vendor is, know where your material is going. I feel like on a weekly basis, we get calls that people don't think their material is being recycled. They saw a garbage truck pick it up instead of instead of a recycling truck. You know, those are the kinds of questions you're going to get. Know how to answer those. Know where your material is going, what's happening, maybe why the trash truck picked up instead of the recycling truck. 9 times out of 10, I'm like, the trash or, the recycling truck might have been down. Or sometimes it's really stating the facts of sometimes your material is not getting recycled because it's contaminated. And folks need to understand that, when they aren't recycling right, it can be contaminated and it might not get recycled for that matter. I had one citizen from a community that I actually work with call and say, I don't understand why we're not recycling this anymore. And the city council person told me XYZ. Well, the city council person told them something that really wasn't correct at all. And that's, again, kind of leads back to the educate your leaders and make sure they know what's going on. And when I explained it to her and why they stopped accepting that type of commodity, she got it. And that's just kind of some of the things that I think is really, really helpful. Find your ambassadors, find your cheerleaders within your community, make sure you're getting them involved. If you're not expanding and you're kind of stagnant in your program, again, look to call to recycle or some of the hard to recycle items that you might want to recycle in your program. And there's my contact information, and thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Rachel. As always, you are a wealth of information for our region. And I really appreciated the information you provided about promoting the program to the leadership in a community. I think that was some great information and not something you hear all the time, and some great ideas there. So, oh, where'd my chat box go? There it is. Okay, so y'all can go ahead and type in questions. There is one so far, and I have one, and there's more popping up. So, okay, we will start with this first one. What is the best way to encourage rural residents to recycle when burying or burning is more convenient for them and common practice?
Sure. I think a lot of the rural communities that I work with own their own landfill. And so we are trying to figure out what's the best option for them. Sometimes with the recycling programs, they do metals or they do HHW in conjunction with what they're accepting. And so when they bring the cardboard or some of the recyclables, that might help generate some revenue that helps cover the cost of some of the other things that are expensive for that community. So, while I'm sure it's easier to burn in some areas, and that's just always going to be a thing, trying to educate them on how that recycling program really does benefit the community, I think can go far. I've definitely had people that have said, I don't care about recycling. I don't want to do recycling. It's inconvenient. I don't want to drive 5 miles to the recycling center, whatever it is. And we just try and give them all the reasons as to why it is important. And especially we talk too about how trash costs are going up and how that can really affect a program as well. So, we're not going to stop all the burners in general, but trying again to kind of educate why it is helpful if they bring their recyclables out to the center instead of doing that, I think can be a benefit.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. It says, would KTB support legislation establishing a recycle value on consumer commodity packaging such as plastic water bottles?
We actually just did from this last legislative session. There was a bill that was specifically looking to try and capture plastic bottles, plastic bags, and some one-time use cups. And that was all something that we did support. And we actually did a lot of research around it. And we did some stakeholder meetings in regards to it, tried to educate as much as we possibly could, because we knew it was legislation that would keep all of those things out of the waterways, keep, the litter out of, the coastal areas. So this was the first year that KTB got behind some legislation in that way.
It says, if possible, could you speak on some of the ways you've partnered with HEB?
Sure. First, they just support our general program, which has been fantastic. We're working with them to see what other ways that we can do community specific projects. So that's kind of coming down the line, but they've talked to us about some potential grant funding to do things. We have the green bag grants through Keep Texas Beautiful as well, That's where you can apply, and there's a variety of different projects that you can do there, but it also pertains to recycling as well. So they're very interested in their sustainability. They've got a great new page. They're working, I think, diligently to see where they can make a mark, especially in HEB specific communities.
Let's see. So you did mention that the domestic markets are growing. Do you see that trend continuing?
I sure hope so. I mean, it has to catch up, if we, the plastic side of what was being sent to China, that was happening for years before the fiber happened. So I think we are seeing some of that growth finally. And it's very exciting to me. I want us to be reliant on ourselves. Our recycling is going to work if we can, really grow the markets here. Now, we are seeing some foreign folks come over and bring back mills that were dormant for a while. So it is coming, just kind of in weird waves. But I think overall, everyone is, if we don't have the markets and we don't have the demand for the material, then what are we doing, and so I do think we're seeing some of those changes. I know that STAR did had legislation to do the recycling market development plan that I believe is coming out in September of this year. And that will be really interesting to see, specific to Texas, because again, what's happening on the West Coast, what's happening on the East Coast isn't the same thing. And even though I wouldn't say the majority of our material in Texas was ever going to China, when the West Coast was definitely sending material there, when they couldn't get their material out, that meant that they came more into the domestic markets. And that's kind of what disrupted so much overall for us. So I do think it's getting better. And yeah, fingers crossed. I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, I'd be able to share a lot more. But I really do think that it's something that we are starting to see a shift, and things have been, despite the pandemic, it felt like it just could have all crashed, but we've actually seen some really good things come out of it.
No. Okay. And one final question here. Do you see the glass recycling market improving anytime soon? What options are out there for communities trying to recycle glass?
Yeah. I can say, like, the Glass Recycling Coalition and Glass Packaging Institute, I think they're really stepping up in the amount of information they're putting out there and trying to just do more, it feels like. Glass is difficult because the best in markets are kind of in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and what's here in Houston is strategic materials. Outside of that, you get west of I-35 and there's just not a whole lot happening, unfortunately. Most of the communities that I work with have a glass pulverizer or have some way to utilize the glass within their community. That's the best way that we've been able to recycle glass in most places. Most of our communities don't recycle glass. We had one, that was the one where I was kind of talking about it a little earlier, where they were paying $50 a ton to get the glass recycled, which was more than it was to put it in their landfill. That's a hard sell to the leaders, and eventually they decided to do away with it. So, it's not changing soon. I do believe that the Houston area is in a good position to work with an end market that's there. Hopefully this market development plan will show that we need glass in other areas of Texas, but I do think kind of the higher ups, if you will, are really working to try and figure out what else they can do, and what, because there's so much that is not collected, that I think there's a good space for that to grow.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Rachel. We are going to move on to our next presenter. Next, we have Zoe Killian, an environmental education specialist for the Woodlands Township. Her role is the recycling and waste management or waste minimization program coordinator of the township solid waste contract. As a part of her mission to empower her community to reduce contamination of residential recycling, she also seeks new opportunities to promote recycling beyond curbside collection. Zoe is a SWANA certified professional, a township affiliate coordinator for Keep Texas Beautiful, and volunteers as a Texas master naturalist and the social media manager for the Woodlands Green, a local nonprofit organization. Today, she's going to be discussing what the Woodlands has been doing to address contamination in their curbside recycling. Turn it over to Zoe.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. I am excited to share information about our solid waste services in the Woodlands, the results of our new recycling cart tag initiative, and share lessons learned from our first round of the program. The Woodlands is a 28,000 acre master plan community just north of Houston between Spring and Conroe. Our current population is 119,000 and is projected to reach 132,000 once completely built. There are 35,500 single-family homes and 7,000 multifamily dwelling units. The solid waste contract is managed by the Environmental Services Department. Our department is a team of 6 that also serves as a community environmental resource center for information about recycling, litter reduction, composting, water conservation, sustainable landscaping practices, gardening for pollinators, mosquito reduction, integrated pest management, and native flora and fauna. We do quite a bit and have quite a bit of information for our residents. We offer free classes, programs, and events for our residents. We renewed our contract with Waste Management for curbside residential services in February 2020. As part of the contract, all residents receive the same level of service that includes weekly pickup of yard trimmings, recycling, and garbage. Additional trash bags are accepted if they have a pink tag that is affixed to each bag. Tags can be purchased for $1.75 at local grocery stores. Residents may also schedule bulky trash pickup on their service day and bulky cardboard on specific days of the month. These services are unlimited and included in our monthly rate. We also have a recycling drop-off center open to all residents. It is intended for residents of apartment complexes that do not have a current recycling program in an effort to provide equal services to all residents in the Woodlands. This facility collects the same items collected in our curbside program. The facility is overseen by the township and is operated and maintained by Waste Management staff. Here are our tonnages for 2020. We see about 24% recycling, 5% yard waste, and 71% garbage. We observe the same increase in tonnage reported by other communities due to the pandemic shifting volume from commercial to residential service, with the increase in people staying home. These figures are from 2020. Because of the equal service and flat rate of our contract, participation in our program is high. All residents have a recycling cart and most are primed to receive recycling information. Diversion is difficult for us to confidently measure outside of the reports we receive for residential services. We heavily promote donation and local recycling opportunities for many items, but we've not been able to confidently report the effects of those promotions in our diversion number. The figure that's been on everyone's mind is contamination. We track this figure through monthly audits received from Waste Management. We've been collecting from audits since 2016. However, there have been changes of auditing policies over the year, especially since the national SORD policy in November 2017. So some of our data is not as consistent, but we can track general trends. Just a little difficult to draw hard conclusions from previous data. Since then, we have strengthened our partnership with our hauler, which has enabled us to collect more consistent data from monthly recycling audits since 2019. Audit methodology was finely tuned after the renewal of our contract in February 2020 that now requires we keep our contamination rate below a 25% threshold to not incur additional processing fees. For every percentage of contamination over 25%, we will pay $148 per ton. If during the month of January, Waste Management collects and processes 500 tons of recycling and the most recent 3-month rolling average of table sort audits indicates 26% contamination level, then we would do, the calculation would be 500 times 1% over the 25% contamination threshold for a $740 contamination fee, and that is adjusted annually. We work closely with Waste Management to ensure audits are performed on requested routes. that we understand the current audit methodology, and that we receive detailed reports, including material types and contamination. We currently receive 4 audits a month. We definitely fine-tune this process now that we are on the hook for anything over 25%, and we require that consistently to track that. Data collected from these audits showed our contamination rate in 2019 averaged 24.6% for the year, and 2020 averaged 21%, a 14% decrease comparing 2019 to 2020. We credit the decrease primarily to the implementation of our new recycling cart tag education program. Before the cart tag program, we tried every medium to expand recycling education: social media posts, blog posts, tabling at events, online or print labs, and our annual mailer. The annual mailer, the most costly of our methods in November, never showed a significant decline in contamination since our data dating back to 2016. Mailers can be ignored easily and are lost in the pile of junk mail that we receive every day. We just found that the return of investment for the mailer did not prove successful enough. In 2018, more and more communities published successful stories of feet on the street and cart tagging programs. We used the fantastic data gathered by these other cities to create a proposal to our board of directors to try cart tagging in lieu of our annual mailer to reduce contamination. Our board was hesitant about privacy concerns and was not keen on the cart inspection part of the program. So we decided to try an educational effort only. No oops or good job tags, no cart inspections, just attaching informational tags with no effect on the resident service. Once we received approval, I began researching best behavior change practices. In my research, I found the following concepts. A back to the basics approach is key. We are presented with an overload of information and complex decisions every day. We filter out the noise, focus on what seems most relevant, and adopt fast decision-making rules to navigate our already complex world. Recycling guidelines have changed quite a bit, and our residents are moving from different communities where recycling guidelines vary. It can seem overwhelming when presented with every single item that is accepted, every single item that is not, and every single thing you should do to recycle right. A consistent, unified message not only instills the message, but also shows residents that recycling is important to your community. It socializes the good recycling behavior and promotes the desirable norm. We also learned that you have to meet people where they are, whether that's social media, a mailer, events, or other means. Not everyone receives their information from one source. You have to try them all. Cart tagging is exceptionally effective because it interrupts their weekly habit of bringing their carts in. They don't often see tags on their carts and it grabs their attention. Sometimes they think that they're in trouble, so it really grabs their attention. I also found that branding is a great tool to make your message appear professional, consistent, and interesting. It also serves as an identifier for those seeking out more information from your specific program. These are the concepts that guided me when designing our cart tag education program. We started the first round of our Recycled Right tag program in February of 2020. Our ultimate goal was to use a new method to educate residents and reduce contamination. We hired 4 temporary staff members to complete the project and projected 400 hours to tag every home. Unfortunately, the first round had to be cut short with about 25% of the routes remaining due to the pandemic. Before starting the program, we alerted our residents of the upcoming tagging effort. We issued press releases and social media posts to prime them ahead of time and reduce confusion. Many had questions before it even started, just from reading that press release and the associated articles that came out. The press release was picked up by local media sources and helped share our message and spread awareness of contamination. We also release social media posts each month to remind people to look out for the tag while the programming is happening. We kept our tag design simple. We aim to reinforce the recycling guidelines and highlight our most common contaminant. Bag recyclables account for half of the contamination in our stream. So we focused on that specific message on one side of the tag. We used simple concepts that were easy to retain and used research-based graphics provided by Recycling Partnership using their fantastic campaign builder. We also chose quality paper for the tag so that it would have a higher perceived value to the recipient, and they would be more likely to keep it for reference. We have received calls from people thinking it is too nice, which I take as a great compliment because it was also a very affordable tag. So a big win. The first round of our cart tagging program proved very successful. We decreased our annual contamination by 14%. This was great despite having to stop the program early due to the pandemic. We saw a trend down in contamination in February, March, and April, but then there was an increase in May and over the rest of the year. This could be related to the shift caused by the pandemic. However, this also tracks with what other communities' tagging efforts showed. Yesterday, there was a report from Waste Dive that talked about Florida and how they saw the same increase while implementing their Feed in the Street program. They also are trying the simple, consistent messaging for their program to better affect contamination rates. We hope this year's data and results from our other communities will support our case for 2 annual rounds in the spring and fall, as well as garner support for cart inspections in the future. We're excited that this first level response has shown it is far more effective than any other effort that we have done, such as that annual mailer, and for half the cost of that mailer. An unexpected result of the program was increased monitoring of our haulers' green tagging consistency. Carts in violation of our curbside guidelines are supposed to be green tagged to communicate the issue with the resident. However, we found instances of drivers not leaving these tags on the carts that had obvious signs of contamination. Our hauler was receptive to the findings and created a training opportunity for those drivers. The majority of feedback received from residents has been positive. We received phone calls from avid and beginner recyclers alike. Avid recyclers are surprised to learn they've been doing something wrong and are eager to talk about it with us. Beginners appreciate the tag and are usually interested in learning more. The negative feedback has definitely been interesting. Most of it has been productive though. Our wording on the tag is direct and catches their attention. Some people believe they're actually in trouble and want to call and find out how they can fix it. The tag has been just a great conversation starter with all residents that didn't know our department was a resource for recycling questions. So it's opened that door for those who wouldn't normally seek out recycling education. We are finishing our second round of cart tagging today. We've seen a small decrease in contamination this year since starting in February, but we won't see the full results until mid-June when we receive May's audits. In addition to our cart tagging program, I've created the Woodlands Recycles Right education campaign that will be included in our promotions all year long. These designs will be used on our website, on social media, and in ads. My goal is for residents to recognize and trust this campaign in our community. There's a lot of recycling information out there that does not pertain to our specific program, and residents find it somehow. They can get their hands on it easily on the internet. Or what their friend tells them. I want our residents to recognize this design and trust it for reliable information. These designs and messages will be shared with community partners and resident organizations to share on their social media page in the form of a social media kit. So here you can see 3 different kinds of posts I'm putting out, the yeses and the nos that are really easy, and then also those ones that are kind of gray. Not in your cart, but yes, there's a local recycling opportunity. We also want to promote that in a simple way. In conclusion, we saw great results from our cart tagging program that just focused on education without inspecting carts. Although inspections yield the best results, our approach has mustered the support from our leadership that we need to propose additional tagging rounds and inspections in the future. If your leadership is unsure, budget is limited, or whatever your constraints may be, I hope you will consider trying the education-only approach as a start. Some of our future goals for the program, we are obviously very incentivized to keep our contamination below 25%. I'd love to see that even lower. Increase awareness, as always, through our ongoing education campaigns and consistent tagging. And then also audit management. Ideally, we currently have 4 audits a month from Waste Management, and we would like to see 1 done on a consistent route so that we can focus targeted education on that specific route and see the effects of it, and be able to measure that. And then 3 rotating, so we get an accurate sample of what's happening in all different, on every single route in the Woodlands. And ideally, we would audit every single route throughout the year. I highly recommend Behavior Change for Nature. It is full of case studies and strategies to improve environmental programs. Recycling Partnership is also an excellent organization that provides research, graphics, methodology, and complete contamination reduction toolkits. It's been very valuable to us every step of the way. Another great tool for creating graphics is Canva. It's a free program with some paid options. If you're not strong in graphic creation, this is a really great tool. It is a fast way to create professional content, and there is a brand feature that saves your color palette and fonts to create a consistent branded appearance. It makes it very easy. You are also welcome to follow us on our blog for updates. You'll see some of that great recycling education content and also some of our other programs that we are coordinating this year. Please feel free to reach out to me anytime to discuss our program. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Zoe. Y'all have gotten some good results on your reductions in contamination, even with the not being able to do what you wanted to fully. So that's great. Excuse me. So I want everybody to start typing their questions, and we do have a question to get started here. So the person asked, why are bagged items counted as contamination, and why doesn't your refuse provider open and process items in these bags?
That is just part of our solid waste contract. They consider it contamination. I know that in the past they said that they used to do that. However, they are not doing that any longer. That's what we've been told.
Okay. And then I had a question. So, and I know you covered it, but I was just confused. So, okay, so you're auditing 4 household or 4 routes or something at a time. So how long does it take you to get through all of the households? And do you do each? So it sounds like you don't do all of them every year. Is that correct?
So Waste Management is conducting those audits for us.
Oh, those are the audits. I mean the cart tagging.
Oh, yes. So cart tagging, it takes about 400 hours to complete the program. That's what we estimated on their, I can go back to that slide to show you. So our taggers, on our first round, we collected a lot of data and we're able to measure the tags, average tags per hour. So they do about 95 tags per hour to complete our 35,500 homes. It takes about 400 hours to complete all those routes. So they would go out for about 3.5 or 4 hours a day to do that.
Okay. And so they do everybody once per year or?
Once per year. Right now, we're just doing 1 round once per year, but we have the information to back requesting to do it twice a year. So we want to do it in the spring and in the fall.
Okay. All right. I just got confused when you were talking about it. So, all right, there are more questions. So this person, regarding the problem with the bags, this person says the bags get caught in the machines. So I guess they're just aren't taking the time to open them up by hand. They don't have any way to do it by machine. And so, yeah, they just cause problems. Okay. So this next question, it says, it appears that glass is accepted. If so, how are you all processing it? Also, do you accept electronics? And if so, what are some challenges?
We do accept glass. That's included in our contract. Waste Management collects glass and processes that for us. Electronics are not accepted in the cart, and we don't have a curbside program for that. We promote other resources for recycling electronics in our communities, such as the Montgomery County Precinct 3 recycling facility for our Montgomery County residents. And we have a small portion of about 3,000 homes in Harris County. It's part of the Woodlands. We promote them going to the Hall Road Recycling Center location, and also going to Best Buy to recycle electronics and some other partner community, other retail places like Staples or Office Depot.
Okay. All right.
And we are working on an electronics recycling collection event this year. It's still in the works.
Okay, so it'll be like a drop-off event.
Drive-through, drop-off.
Okay, great. All right, that is all the questions that are there right now, but people can ask more questions at the end. We should have a few minutes for any questions that didn't get asked right now. So thank you very much, Zoe, and we are going to move on to our last speaker of the morning. Let's see. So our last speaker is Jessica Levine, the manager of strategic engagement at the Recycling Partnership. In her work there, Jessica supports efforts to recruit and engage funding partners for community projects. She also leads the partnership's Recycling Inclusion Fund work to support recycling infrastructure equity, research, and leadership development for Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. Jessica is a graduate of Agnes Scott College, where she received a bachelor's degree in business management and a minor in environmental and sustainability studies. And today she's going to be talking about inequalities in recycling access, participation, and other topics. So if you have any questions at any time, just type those in there and we'll get to those when she's done. So turn it over to you, Jessica.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Erin. Are you able to hear me well?
I am able to hear you. Yes.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Jessica Levine. I am the manager of strategic engagement with the Recycling Partnership, and I am very appreciative of the opportunity to connect with you all today. Today, I'm looking forward to sharing with you all how we can address inequities in recycling access and participation, and really work together to improve equitable recycling where we live, where we work, and also where we serve. I would like to start by taking a couple of minutes to share a bit about the Recycling Partnership, because it's really important for you to understand how our work is directly aligned with why our structuring of the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, the way that we're doing so really relate. So today I would like to cover the mission of the partnership and why our model is effective. I'd like to cover the needs to address inequities in recycling and the opportunities to do so, and also how through partnership we can really drive positive system change together. But first, I'd like to tell you a little bit about me and why I believe this topic is so important today. So I discovered my passion for the environment and sustainability during my senior year of high school, actually. And very quickly, I began to immerse myself in academic studies related to the field and ensured that all of my leadership roles in college and the external work experiences that I had really encompassed sustainability in some way, shape, or form. And empowered by my upbringing, my role models, and mentors through personal and professional experiences, I had noticed that not many people look like me amongst leadership within this space. And I considered why and what my contribution to the industry could be to change that. And to my surprise, very quickly, in 2018, at 23 years old, I became the youngest and first person of color to join the Recycling Partnership. And we're an organization that for over 7 years now have really been committed to empowering the systems that enable recycling to happen at the community level. So in addition to supporting the organization, as Erin mentioned, as manager of strategic engagement, I also support the organization as the diversity, equity, and inclusion subject matter expert focused on the intersection of recycling and also environmental equity. And I'm really appreciative for the opportunity to be able to say that work and expertise and experience really aligns with my effort toward building up the partnership's Recycling Inclusion Fund. And I look forward to telling you a bit more about that throughout my presentation. But all of this really kind of hones down to saying that I'm thrilled to be here today to connect with you all and to stand up and speak out about the important matters like recycling, waste, and environmental equity, but also to really encourage you all to do the same. So a little bit more about our organization. The Recycling Partnership is a national nonprofit, and we're an action agent transforming the recycling system for good. We have a very small but mighty team, which I'm sure many of you might be familiar with, our community technical assistance team that really works to throughout all parts of the recycling value chain, and really are our boots on the ground when it comes to engagement with our community partners. So we work with thousands of communities to transform underperforming recycling programs and also to tackle circular economy challenges. We work with companies also to make their packaging more recyclable and also to help them meet their climate and sustainability goals. And this slide here really speaks to those corporate partners. So we know that making bold change really does begin by building trust and collaboration, and that's at the corporate level, but also really at the community level, which our speakers have really addressed and spoken to today. And that's why more than 70 leading companies and counting have joined our mission to transform recycling for good. Our partners across and within industries understand that we can have a much bigger impact on creating environmental, economic, and the social change really by working together more so than by working alone. And with more support, there's a collective awareness that we can make an even larger impact on people's everyday lives and also to the planet. This slide really speaks to how, although our system may be loosely connected, we are highly dependent. As I am sure many of you know, recycling is unique. It starts in the home, but really does feed a complex reverse supply chain that determines the fate of corporate recycling content and also sustainability goals. And it's only working if everyone can participate and materials are collected and can be processed. However, we know that recycling is not provided evenly across the US, and many packages currently found on store shelves can't be recycled through residential programs. And because each part of the recycling system is dependent on the other, it's important to know that we need to work together to address and call out opportunities for improvement within supply chains to address challenges across our system. So the partnership's work really falls into 4 strategic work streams, which I will cover in a moment. And although the work streams are interdependent in some ways, all of our work is focused on creating an effective US recycling system in order to enable a circular economy for packaging in the US. So I'd like to really hone in on talking about the value of partnership. So with the support of our funding partners, as many of you know, we work across these key areas. First, we deliver a very tremendous amount of work in communities to help families in America recycle and recycle well. To do that, we match up corporate dollars from our funding partners with communities in need and use that money to invest in infrastructure like recycling carts and recycling trucks, as well as residential education to make recycling systems run better, to decrease contamination, and to also increase participation and really improve the recycling system in general. We also have a dedicated work stream aimed at improving the fate of packaging that is currently not recycled. Packaging that comes top of mind are polypropylene and film and flexibles. We work with government to develop the policy solutions that will address the system's needs of our residential recycling system. And finally, through our 7 years really on the grounds and in communities, we're able to leverage data to drive and inform systems-based decisions. So this includes the development and the rollout of a national database system that provides location-based information to residents where they live, and it includes the development of a national generation and capture model to understand what material is still in the home across the country. And it includes deploying tools for both our community and our corporate partners. Today, I'd like to focus on this pillar of the system specifically, which focuses on improving residential recycling for all people in the US. So what does recycling look like in the US? It's easy to assume that everyone can recycle as easy as they can throw something away. However, about 40 million US households still do not have recycling access that is equitable to the trash service that they receive. So to address that gap, as mentioned earlier, we provide grants to communities to move them into curbside cart-based collection. We also address recycling behavior that impact the quality of recyclables and the level of recycling participation. This map on the slide shows how our work in cities and states across the country intersect. So while recycling education can be an afterthought in tight community budgets, we know how important it really is to maximizing material recovery and building trust in recycling systems with residents. And so if you were to focus on education only without access, only about 4 to 8% of a community's residents would be driving their recycling or recyclables to drop off. And over time, we've studied the best way to get the most recycling out of every single family home. And our research shows an average home generates about 800 pounds of recyclables per year in the US. And communities can take different measures to capture that material and return it to the manufacturing supply chain by recycling. So this chart on this slide shows community programs that move from handheld recycling bins to large carts will typically double the amount of material collected. And that's merely by increasing the size of the container they give to people. So as you start to provide access, you increase tonnage. However, you can see that you get the same increase in tonnage from bins to carts as you do when you add education to carts. And quality education can grow your recycling rate by about 50% or more. Then when you layer good targeted education on top of the strengthened and improved access, you capture another 200 pounds of recyclables per household per year. And with that, there's another 50% increase. So our goal overall with each community that we touch and work with collaboratively is to get that green bar that you see on this slide as large as we can to capture as many of the 800 pounds as possible. So we've spent the dollars in single family, which is what's got us this chart here, but the partnership is also investing in figuring this out where the industry currently doesn't know that number. And in one of those areas specifically is in the multifamily space. And so we're looking forward to applying some significant investment in 2021 continued to really start to gather a data set in multifamily space in cities like Sarasota County, San Diego, California, and also Orlando, Florida. And I actually have a slide on that that I'll be able to share with you as well. So I know that was a lot in that last slide, but to summarize, we understand that before we can really implore residents to recycle, every person needs the ability to do so. And once they have that access, we can't really expect people to recycle without educating them in a meaningful way, which many of you all have touched on already. But at that point, we know that we can really dig in to influence their recycling behavior and maximize tons together. And taken together, these 3 steps are the foundation of what we believe to be an equitable and informed recycling system. And all of that really rolls up into a stronger communities in general, which feed economic and environmental benefits, as we know. When we strengthen community infrastructure and education, we are really able to drive system change. And for almost 7 years now, the impact of our work has been tracked and is reported monthly to our partners. We actually have a connection with our corporate partners later today, but we have supported over 2,000 communities to date and are really close to delivering our 1 millionth recycling cart on the ground, which we're very, very excited to announce and to speak to very soon. So one thing that I think is important that we mention here is that we are able to track the percentage of our grants that have impacted Brown and Black communities. So since our inception, the demographics of the communities that we have delivered carts to have a much higher percentage of Black and Brown residents than the national average. The national average is 31% Black and Hispanic, while our projects are 49%. So that was a quick and high level overview of our community work, but I hope what you can really take away is that we have developed a model to address recycling equity, best practices to support resident education and data to track our progress. I'm going to now turn to the Recycling Inclusion Fund, where we're putting this expertise to work to address some of the systemic barriers to recycling faced by marginalized communities. So the Recycling Inclusion Fund, how does this fit into our broader goals and objectives? Well, our collective experience over our 7 years as an organization shows that recycling services across the US disadvantage certain streets, neighborhoods, and housing types along socioeconomic lines. And this essentially excludes participation in a system that we know benefits the entire US economically and environmentally. And so we believe that providing recycling service equitably is only the first step. The next few slides speak to our 4 perspectives on equal recycling access in the US. So the first is, while recycling feels universal, only about 2/3 of the US population has the same level of access to recycling as they do garbage service. And the access gap is more prominent in multifamily housing. To support that previous slide, this slide here really speaks to the unequal access to recycling containers within the single family versus multifamily experience. So the blue bar symbolizes households with access, and the purple bar speaks to households without access. On this slide, we can see that trash and recycling are more difficult to manage than we might think. There are more single-family households that recycle than multifamily households, and less than 30% of multifamily households have access to recycling. So multifamily residences are typically treated as commercial properties, so they are outside a local government's control, unless there is a community recycling ordinance and outreach and enforcement dollars in place to ensure recycling is provided by property managers. But again, as I mentioned a few slides above, I am really excited, and we are as an organization excited for the good work to come as we continue to drive change on the multifamily front. So our second perspective is that socioeconomically disadvantaged Black and Brown populations or people of color often have unequal access to recycling infrastructure and education materials compared to more affluent neighborhoods. And so we've been talking to public housing agencies across the country, and they've expressed that due to some barriers, they have no ability to add to their budget. So we know that mitigating that really requires new and innovative funding approaches, which we continue to work on to date. Another perspective is that only half of recyclables in homes with service are recycled. And for minority populations, these numbers may be lower due to the lack of inclusive education resources that really speak to their needs and in their language. So we also know that if people are new to recycling or have a lack of trust in a system that hasn't served them well in the past, that it really takes an education and outreach opportunity to really engage with them. So to provide an example of this perspective, on the next slide, I'd like to share a brief overview of a study our partners in Orlando conducted that looked at recycling performance based on specific socioeconomics and demographics. So an example of what research could look like is the city of Orlando, in partnership with Florida's Solid Waste Authority, conducted a study in which a random sample of 18 neighborhoods were selected from the city's 6 commissioner districts to establish whether there is a relationship between recycling participation, or over set out rate, and income level, education attainment, and also racial or ethnic origin profiles of the neighborhoods. And so they found a positive correlation between household income and recycling participation, and neighborhoods with the highest household income also had the highest recycling participation rate, while those with the lowest income had the lowest recycling participation rate. So on the other hand, they found this negative relationship between education attainment and recycling participation rate. And so neighborhoods with a high percentage of people with no high school diploma had the lowest recycling participation, while those neighborhoods that had fewer people with no high school diploma had higher participation rates. So we also found through this study three racial or ethnic groups that were the predominant in each of the neighborhoods, which were African-American, Hispanic, and white. Neighborhoods with high populations of African-American people had the lowest recycling participation. Neighborhoods with mainly Hispanic people had a mid-range recycling participation rate. And neighborhoods with predominantly white people had the highest recycling participation rate. So these findings helped us identify the social inequalities that are potentially acting as barriers to increasing recycling rates. And with specific support from our partners, we will be working to solve that disparity in participation through resources from our Recycling Inclusion Fund. Let's see. So this slide here kind of takes this work a step further in that from that single family opportunity and study, now we look at a multifamily lens. And so with special support from partners through support of cash grants and technical assistance from the partnership, the city of Orlando will be able to execute a multifamily dwelling recycling pilot project. And the city has a population of over 269,000 people and nearly 75,000 multifamily residential units. And they operate a multifamily recycling collection system that really is in a strong position to capture new multifamily recycling customers through cart and front load container service. And so with support from our organization, we will be able to offer that technical assistance that we spoke about earlier, and also physical resources to Orlando residents to strengthen overall recycling infrastructure in the multifamily space again. So through this effort, we will also examine how we can work with municipalities and other forms of government as they implement similar mandatory multifamily recycling ordinances. But this work is a precursor to the potential involvement with others who have pending implementation of mandatory multifamily recycling in 2022 and beyond. So I use this slide here to really support the previous slide to show that we will be empowering the multifamily project managers and also residents through the delivery of recycling service and assets. And so some of those assets are shown here, being information cards, bin and directional signage, recycling guides, and also in-unit containers that will be available in multiple languages to actively manage and participate, actively support residents to manage and participate in their recycling program. And the last perspective, but certainly not least, we see racial disparities within our industry's professionals. So I think that there might be common awareness that there is definitely diversity within our workforce in this space, but when it comes to leadership, there is a lack of representation compared to the communities that we serve. And so with that in mind, based on the 4 specific perspectives that I've mentioned, and based on our community and economic impacts to date, I will say that, as an organization, we are proud of the work that we have accomplished to improve the health of communities that we serve. But it's important to note and to call out that there is a challenge or a problem of racism in America that really does directly connect to our organization's mission. And we also are compelled to do something about it. So on this slide here is a statement or pledge made by our CEO, Keith Harrison, and we updated our organization's core values to include standing up and speaking out for equity and inclusion. So we also considered this question where we think about, with consideration to the partnerships platform and also our network of community and corporate partners, what could we do to help build an equitable recycling system in the US, again, with consideration to those 4 perspectives that I mentioned. And we believe that we can address the inequity of recycling access and participation in the US. We can identify participation gaps and need within communities where there are large populations of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We can increase recycling access and the level of recycling participation in areas where populations are historically underserved and undersupported. And we can also support the advancement of people of color within industry. And we are actively working toward these 4 objectives that support mitigating those perspectives by applying a few strategies. And so one of them is that inside our organization, we are fostering a culture of belonging. And we are committed to diversifying our staff and also our board through thoughtful and intentional recruitment and also continued learning. Externally, we will be working with communities to help increase equitable recycling access and participation, while also conducting research that really is imperative to fully understanding the gaps within the system, so we can better serve undersupported and underserved communities who are historically undersupported. And we are integrating a multicultural lens into our work streams to really ensure they are core to our efforts, not just now, but also as we continue to grow together. And then last but not least, within our industry, we are supporting the advancement of people of color through the creation of a fellowship program, which I'm excited to share with you all a bit further. So through the Recycling Inclusion Fund, we are not just focused on one area, as I mentioned. We're trying to tackle multiple pieces that address challenges in the system. And we believe that, again, through partnership, we can make that lasting change together. The next few slides really speak to how the Recycling Inclusion Fund contributions from our partners will support ongoing work in communities and specifically within 3 specific areas. And so contributions through the Recycling Inclusion Fund will support research. And that is with awareness that recycling service and support is not provided equitably. And so through this fund, we're conducting research to understand the systemic exclusion of underserved and undersupported groups, where people are being underserved and what is needed in specific communities to really support equitable change. Also, we know that access to recycling service is not equitably distributed. So we will increase access and the level of recycling participation in areas where individuals are historically underserved and undersupported, and that's through infrastructure and education investment. I'd say that the multifamily project that I spoke to earlier in Orlando, Florida, is one of those projects where the inclusion funds is supporting moving that work forward. And also through the fellowship and training program, with awareness again that there is a lack of diverse representation amongst leadership within our industry. We want to develop and kick off a fellowship program to really tool up individuals with resources and training to create a pipeline for developing change agents and really bright minds and passionate individuals with the leadership potential within our industry to have a strong trajectory forward. And this slide here really speaks to inaugural contributors of our Recycling Inclusion Fund to date. And again, by directing these grant dollars toward investments in these areas that I've mentioned of infrastructure and education, research, and also fellowship and training, we know that we can mitigate those systemic exclusions of underserved individuals so that all households have access to the resources and tools that they need to live a more sustainable life. And so far, these 5 companies have stepped up to really kick off this work, and we're looking forward to really the great work ahead. But before I close, I want to make sure that I recognize the good work now and ahead with the recent launch in Houston. So we recently launched a Feet on the Street project with Houston, and this speaks to the cart tagging opportunity. But this program is being supported also by grant dollars from the Houston-Galveston Area Council. So I want to say thank you. But the program is bringing recycling education into the neighborhoods of Houston to really meet residents where they recycle. And of course, as you all know, that's at the curb mostly. And so the project has just gotten started and will be ongoing until October. And when the project results are received and the stats are received, we look forward to sharing those. But the project area was carefully selected to ensure communities were properly represented. And all materials are also in English and Spanish, and we call that translation. On the slide and the next, I show a few examples of education materials used during the program to empower residents with information to actively manage and participate in their recycling program. As you can see, the resources are also translated in Spanish and English. And I'll also say that this is an example of the power of partnership that really makes room for our dollars to go further. So thank you all. So I'll go to that next slide here. So again, here are a few additional examples of those education materials. I know we're limited on time, but if anyone is interested in learning more about this really exciting and impactful project, please reach out to Sarah Mason. I believe she's on this call with the city, who can share more information to come. But really summing up this presentation here are a few key takeaways. So if our collective goal is that everyone can recycle well and engage in a healthy community, then 3 things are required. First, people need the ability to recycle. then they need the ability to be knowledgeable on how to do it well. And finally, they need engagement from a trusted messenger in a way that is relevant to them to build trust in the system. So all these three things are required for that quality recyclables to move through the system, and has then added benefit of helping U.S. industries meet their sustainability goals. So what can you do specifically? I have a bit of a call to action. So I encourage you all to stand up and speak out for equity and inclusion. And that's both internally within your organizational spaces, externally, and also as you think about industry. I encourage you to know your accepted materials list in your community and recycle everything you can. And last but not least, to share the presentation and online tools. During our call, it was really great to hear that our open source resources that are free online have been used by so many of you all. But I encourage you to check out and share the following digital resources with your employees. These are a few resources shared with our corporate and community partners during Earth Month, but I believe that they're still very much so interesting, helpful, useful, and so I encourage you to use them as well. And our website, again, has many open source resources, so please check them out. And thank you for helping to really join us in listening, learning, and doing more to uphold equality. Thank you all for your time.
All right, thank you so much, Jessica. You have talked about a topic that I don't think is talked about as much as some other ones, so I really appreciate you doing that. And I really like in the Orlando project that they gave everybody a bin to put in their apartments, because I feel like that it sounds like that would help a lot to me. Just to, give them, we want you to do this, and then here's how you can easily do it. Like, we're going to go ahead and give you the tools you need for that. So. Great. Do you have some questions that have already popped up? So we are going to start with those. Oh, where'd they go? They always move. And then if anybody else has any questions, please do type those in. All right, let me scroll up. Okay, here's the first one. How do you support communities that do not have access to curbside recycling due to their distance to a MRF?
One thing that I'll mention is that our technical assistance team has really strong, best management practices in general, in engaging with communities and engaging with residents, and through behavior change research, really works on, again, meeting residents where they are. So to your question, I would say really working with that resident, who may have a question, and email it to us for us to provide, information on who they should contact, locally. Even though there might not be a recycling program locally, there may be an individual or a coordinator who can support them with, where to take their recyclables. And so we support them with those best management practices and consulting as well.
All right, next one. Do you have recommendations on how to start recycling services in very low income areas such as Colonias on the border? How do you set up services when cities are hesitant due to a lack of profit?
I would say, again, the first thing, is connecting with those recycling stakeholders or community stakeholders local to the area, understanding what their challenges might be when it comes to building or forming a recycling program. And we do with our best efforts to support them. Again, the Recycling Inclusion Fund is in place to really support communities who need a program strengthened or need it to be formed. And so if it's the case that there aren't dollars there, through the Inclusion Fund, that's where I'm fundraising currently to make sure that we can support those communities. So if it is the case that you're interested in learning more about the Inclusion Fund, please do reach out to me, and I will definitely connect you with our community engagement team to ideate around what next steps could be.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to read the next one. It says, thank you, Jessica, for your work and care regarding this tough issue. As a woman of color, I have long noticed and been very discouraged by the disheartening disparities in recycling education and services within minority communities. What is the major challenge you find with garnering governmental and corporate support for empowering recycling within these underserved communities?
That's a very good question. In my engagement with, say, potential contributors of the Inclusion Fund, I'd say the main challenge is just calling out inequity, right? Again, one of the things that I had mentioned in the presentation is that although, you know, recycling seems universal, right? We have numbers to show that it isn't. And I think from you know, different, you know, groups within corporations, it may be the case that those inequities aren't known. So I think calling it out is the most important thing, but it's something that may not always be so common. So again, standing up and speaking out is that big piece. And, you know, within companies, what I found is that if you have a CSR team or a sustainability team, then you have a, you know, external affairs team, you have a diversity, equity, and inclusion team, right? All of these different departments, but how often is it the case that they're connected together, right? Communicating together. And so I think that there's definitely room for more connection internally within companies, so that those call outs, that awareness is really highlighted. And that's, you know, that start of addressing the challenge or addressing inequities or problems is the first step in being able to ideate around what can be done or forming solutions. So I hope that helps to answer that question.
Okay, thank you. So that is all the questions right there right now, but so thank you, Jessica, but we do have some more time. So if anybody has any additional questions and you want to get those into the chat box, or if you want to raise your hand, I'm not good at looking to see if anybody raises their hand. So the chat's probably the best, but I will try. But do get those in there. So, and if you are typing a question, and it would be helpful if you put the name of the speaker. So if you want to put Bill, Rachel, Zoe, or Jessica, that would be helpful since it's now open to all speakers at this point. So while you are potentially typing in questions, I did want to mention a couple of things that HJC has been working on. So first up is since the beginning of 2020, each month we do put out Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram posts around a central theme. So some of these are recycling related themes, and some are household hazardous waste. It's all related to solid waste management, but anyways, different themes. So we don't have Instagram or Twitter for recycling. We don't have accounts for those, but we do have a Facebook one. So we do post our Facebook one every Tuesday. And we encourage you to follow the HJC Recycling Facebook account, and also to share those if you want to do that, if you feel that the message would be helpful to your community. And so then we do make all of the past posts, including the Twitter and Instagram, all the Facebook posts. We do post all of those on our website at the beginning of the next month. And so they are all there from the beginning if you want to look back through those and see if there's anything you want to focus on. So we did that so that, you know, those of you that wear a lot of hats, and so your focus is not on, you know, social media and getting word information out about they're all pretty generic. So most should work in your community, unless it's about electronics and you do nothing related to electronics or something like that. But so we just wanted to be able to help communities out and do some of that work for you. So Andrea has posted the link to our website where you can find all of those posts. So please do take a look at that. The next thing I did want to mention, so there was a comment that Harris County Household Hazardous Waste Facility does not accept electronics. And then Zoe responded that yes, she misspoke. So just wanted to point that out in case any of you were in Harris County and thinking that's where you're going to take your electronics. So I just wanted to point out that side conversation. And we do have one other thing related that may be helpful in that situation. HJC was recently working on updating all of our information that we have about local government run recycling facilities throughout our region. So we do have a map on our website, and Andrea is going to post that. She may have already posted that in the chat. Yes, she did. And so you can check out that and you can promote that to your residents. And we also would appreciate it if you could take a look at it and make sure your stuff's correct. We did just, contact people and try and update all of that. But if things do change in the future, definitely let us know. You can send that information to Andrea. She has posted her contact information in the chat as well. And then if you know of any that we missed, maybe there's something out there that we missed, and we would love to get those out there as well. And we are also, the next phase of the project is to try and get all the information on Earth 911 updated, because that is a great resource for everybody to use. But I do find that a lot of the information is outdated. So that is our next phase. I don't know when that will be completed. It's a huge job, so it's gonna take a while. So let's see, we're going to look at the chat and see what questions have popped up, because yes, let's see. All right, is it possible to obtain contact information by email of each of the speakers? Yes, I can include all of that information. I will be sending out an email after as a follow-up to this webinar, so I can include that information in there. Question for Zoe, what funding sources does the Woodlands use for educational materials besides TCEQ grants?
So we receive 1% of our solid waste contract back for educational purposes. We also have a budget in the Environmental Services Department taken from taxes collected by the township that we use.
Okay, all right. Let's see, one for Bill. I had a question about your Freon, how you hired somebody to come in and do that. I just wonder how you got that set up. Did you know somebody who used to do this type of work and you just reached out to them, or did you advertise? Or I just think that was I feel like a lot of people could maybe do that too. So
it was an adventure. I started out calling some AC guys to try and get quotes, and most of them would not even return my phone calls. Once it did, it was ridiculously expensive. Then I contacted a young man that I knew that was in AC school in the Dallas area. And he said, sure, when I graduate, I'll come back. It'd be somewhere between $75 and $100 a unit. And I knew that wasn't going to work. And then I reached out to some local people that knew this retired guy. And I called him in, asked him if he'd be interested in working. He said, sure. And I said, would you be interested in training one of my employees or let him shadow you? And he said, sure, I'll do that. And I said, how much? And he said, oh, $20, $25 a unit if you'll pay for the stuff.
yeah.
Away we went, and it's been, and I have a young man that is knowledgeable enough probably to do it. He's just not licensed and certified yet. But and I think even one of your personnel mentioned one time that that might be something that's fundable or trainable.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I'm excited. I think we got the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I know that's definitely a problem in a lot of communities that don't have solutions for removing that Freon. So I think
Look for old people.
Look for old people. Okay, let's see. This person, I think they're talking to you, Bill. It says, what line of work or certification does the individual have? I guess what kind of certification does the Freon person need to have?
I'm not for sure, but have to be certified by the state of Texas that you can take in the Freon. I don't think you have to be a licensed plumber, but I could be wrong. And then getting rid of the Freon that you have collected only can go to a licensed certified facility, and only a licensed collector can get rid of it at the facility.
Okay.
There's a lot of certifications involved. I'm sorry I'm not more knowledgeable, but
No, that's okay.
that is.
Yeah, so it's complicated. Y'all have found a way to do it, and other people can figure it out too, hopefully. So, okay, let's see if there's any other questions. Well, I guess I will ask the presenters if I can share their email addresses. Some of them shared them in the presentation, so those probably I can for sure without asking, but I will make sure before I do that. And then if y'all have additional questions, you can contact them, or you can reach out to me and I can get in contact with them if needed. So let's see. So a couple more things before we finish here. So I did want to remind everybody that we did record this webinar. So as long as Zoom has not failed us, we will be posting the recording to our YouTube channel for HGAC. We'll be doing that maybe next week, I guess, or so, if there's not a problem. So if you want to go back and look at or hear something again, or if you want to share it with somebody, you can do that. If that fails, then we will just have the presentations that we can post to our website. Let's see, I will be sending out a link in my follow-up email to a survey. It's a quick survey, just letting us know how we've done today on this webinar. The link is in the chat box right now if you'd like to go ahead and take that survey, but I will be sending it out in my follow-up email. So I don't see any other questions right now, so we're going to conclude. So that is all we have for you this morning. And I did want to give a final thank you to all of our presenters. A lot of great information was shared, and I so appreciate you taking the time in preparing that information for us. So if you do think of questions afterwards, you can email those to me or directly to the presenters. And thank you to everyone for joining us today, and have a great rest of your week. All right. Bye.
Thank you so much.